Hello, my name is Zach Thompson. I'm currently enrolled in digital cinematography, and this is the history of slashers. We can trace the origin of the slasher films to the 50s in Germany with the production of the Krimi films. Most of these films were based on the works of novelist Edgar Wallace and had a focus on a strong masked villain. Examples of the film are 1959's Face of the Frog and 1967's Creature with the Blue Hand. In Italy in the 1960s and 70s, Galileo films were released that also focused on a mass killer. The 1963 film, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, gives us a trope of a protagonist trying to unmask a murderer by themselves. Another important note is that Galileo films increased the gore and sexuality. Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 Psycho is considered to be the first slasher film in Hollywood. Psycho sets the trope of the monster being a mentally tortured human being who goes on a murderous spree and shows us the explicit violence. The reason we get such violence and sexual expression on the screen is because the Hays Code had been replaced. This allowed directors to push explicit content to its limits. Another movie worth pointing out at the time is Michael Powell's Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom has the same voyeurs theme as Psycho and follows a mentally ill young man who is infatuated by killing pretty females. Although it does not receive the same recognition as Psycho, it is important to mention its use of shots from the killer's POV. Maybe the single most important day in slasher history is October 11, 1964. On this day, Bob Clark's Black Christmas is released in Canada, and Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is released in the United States. Both films have a psychopathic villain with a high bloodlust for teenagers or young adults. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre does start the trope of the final girl. Directly inspired by Black Christmas, John Carpenter released Halloween in 1978. This film brought the horror to suburban living and helped submit tropes such as the final girl, teenage victims, mass killers, and sexually active characters will die. The slasher boom of the 1980s is started by Sean S. Cunningham's Friday the 13th. This film would set the cliché setting of a summer camp and submit the trope of teens being picked off one by one. This film also continued to push the gore factor of slasher films. In 1984, we arrive at the release of Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's character added supernatural characteristics to the slasher. Whereas Jason's mom would stalk the victims at Crystal Lake, Freddy would stalk them in their dreams. These supernatural elements directly inspire Tom Holland's 1988 Child's Play and Bernard Rose's 1991 Candyman. By this point, slasher films have become a ghost in the shell of their predecessors and have been sequeled to death. Cut to 1994, Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. This film has a meta theme and is self-aware. As we father Heather Langenkamp, the actress who played Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, play herself when Freddy comes to the real world. This way of thinking directly inspires Wes Craven's Scream. Scream redefines the genre with its self-aware commentary and the way that it breaks tropes and cliches of the slasher genre. One such is the example of there being two killers. The 2000s and beyond are ridiculed with remakes, but there are some notable films. One of such films is Happy Death Day, which puts a Groundhog's Day-like spin on the slasher genre. Final mention is the Terrifier series, which stays true to the subgenre of slasher films, but does add a bit of a twist.